These trucks carry the bodies of 104 Yazidis murdered by ISIL. Nearly 7 years after their killing, they are at last on their way to their final resting place. They were among thousands killed and buried in mass graves in the northern region of Sinjar, and are the first to be identified using DNA analysis after their remains were exhumed from the mass graves. Now they have a name, a face, a family to return to. In life, the Iraqi government didn't protect them from ISIL's systematic campaign of killing and kidnapping. In death, it is trying to grant them the respect they deserve.
Today's funeral procession is a message that terrorism targeted members of this oppressed community. And Iraq today wanted all the world to sympathize with the fallen, and there should be justice and punishment for the perpetrators.
But for this group of Yazidi survivors who met Iraqi parliamentarians on Wednesday, the government hasn't done enough. They say the exhumation of the dozens of mass graves in Sinjar is taking too long.
The mass graves have been there for 7 years. They're not under ISIL's control anymore. Anyone can go to these mass graves, but nobody cares.
They also accuse Parliament of dragging its feet to enact a draft law that would, almost 5 years after the UN has done so, recognize the crimes committed against them as genocide. It would also grant them compensation and create a mandate to search for the approximately 3,000 Yazidis still missing.
The female survivors don't have rights, and we are always repeating our demands for rights, for us and for our brothers, sisters, mothers and sons who are still in the hands of ISIL. The government is always saying ISIL is finished, ISIL is gone, but why did nobody bring our families back?
The Yazidi survivor law was submitted to Parliament in 2019, but voting has been repeatedly delayed. If passed, it would also lay the legal basis for Iraqi courts to use evidence gathered by UN investigators to prosecute ISIL suspects.
Justice, accountability, truth-telling, proper investigations, fair trials are critically important, not only to expose the violent extremist ideology of Daesh, but it will do that also, but to ensure that the value of human life is underscored and that those individuals are exposed and confronted by those that have survived in a courtroom by hard evidence that is reliable, that is relevant, that have probative value, and so that when punishment is meted out, sentences are given, nobody can say that there is an injustice.
The objective of Thursday's ceremony wasn't simply to return the bodies, but to acknowledge the crime, with the hope it will not be repeated.
The 104 remains will be transported to the village of Kocho in Sinjar, where they will be returned to their families and laid to rest in line with Yazidi tradition. Though the funeral may offer some closure for survivors, their struggle for justice, dignity and rights is far from over. Simona, Foltyn, Al Jazeera, Baghdad.